the Ammach project.
Hello and welcome to Ammach in America. Miles, Marie and myself are here at the 22nd International UFO Congress, and we're here in sunny Arizona. It's wonderful. Now I have a very special guest and I'm absolutely delighted and honored to welcome Bod Dean. Bob, welcome.
Thank
you for spending some time with us. I know you're busy. I know you're very sought after.
It's my pleasure, sweetheart. Thank you.
I would just like to ask you about your initial experiences and how you got to your understanding of ET and the effect it's having on our planet and our governments and the governments of the world's involvement. So perhaps you could kick us off with some of your...
You're asking me to go back from to the beginning, honey, and we have to go back 50 years at least. I spent most of my adult life as a professional soldier.
Yes.
I spent 27 years on active duty in the Army, and I had the pleasure of being assigned to Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers in Europe, in 1963, which at that time was located just outside of Paris in France. So I went off to my new assignment in 1963.
And what was your role in that assignment?
Well, I was assigned, at the time I had a top secret clearance. And I applied for an assignment at SHAPE because it was rather a choice assignment.
Sure.
I was able to take my wife, children with me, and we went to Paris. My kids went to high school in Paris. And in the summer of 1963, I went off to SHAPE headquarters in Paris with a top secret clearance. At the moment I arrived, I was assigned to the operations division of SHAPE headquarters, and a further assignment to what we call SHOC, the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center.
Okay.
Which was that time the war room. So my top secret clearance was upgraded to cosmic top secret, which was then and still is the highest level of security classification in NATO.
Right.
And I worked in the war room. And I was assigned to run the duty rosters in the war room, and we were on a shift, 10 and 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was during that assignment that I was exposed to a very top secret, sensitive shape study called an assessment. And the assessment at the time was a study that they initiated in 1961. They published it in 63. And I got a copy and I was able to read it, and it changed my life.
And what were the circumstances of you having access to this document?
Well, I had a cosmic top secret clearance, and I worked in the war room.
All right, okay.
And when they published the document, they only published 15 copies. And one of the copies was assigned to the Shape War Room, Shock. And because I worked there, I had a desk in there, I was exposed to the document. I had a chance to look at it, and it literally blew my lid. It changed my life. It was a 3-year study that NATO had done about the extraterrestrial presence. The fact that they were here, they'd been here for several thousands of years, and the initial study was decided to determine whether they were or not a threat to Allied forces in Europe.
And was there something that precipitated this report being made in the first place?
Well, of course. One of the things that caused the big stir back then is that we in the Soviet Union, we had a divided Europe. The Iron Curtain had come down.
Yes.
We had the NATO forces on the left side, Western Europe. The Warsaw Pact and the NATO, or the Soviet forces, were on the eastern side. And there had been a number of flyovers of large circular metallic craft flying all over Europe in those days,
Right.
in formation, very obviously under intelligent control. Now, for a time, the Soviets thought those objects belonged to us. And for a short time, we thought they might belong to the Soviets.
Which could have caused a real issue.
Well,
and
it
problem.
could have posed a real issue. We were armed to the teeth.
Sure.
The Warsaw Pact on the east and the NATO forces on the west. We all had our hands on the guns and fingers on the triggers.
Buttons, yeah.
Yeah, World War III was moments away. So these objects flying all over Europe in formation at a high altitude, tremendous speeds, and obviously under intelligent control. So this NATO study was decided to determine what were they? Were they a threat to us? What were they? Who were they?
Yeah.
We found out that they didn't belong to the Soviets, and the Soviets found that they didn't belong to us. So the big question was, who the hell are these guys? And this 3-year study indicated that they were extraterrestrials from several other planets, and they were here monitoring everything we did.
And did they name the kind of planets that were involved? Did they have any idea?
In those days, they had no idea where they were from. All we knew during the study was that there were 4 different groups involved.
Right.
They were all humanoid, but one group was entirely human. They looked so much like us that they could have sat beside us in a restaurant or in a theater or in an airplane, and we would have never known.
And how did they find out about these 4 different races? Was it a consequence of downed craft?
Well,
that kind of thing?
I refer, quote unquote, they made it very clear to everybody, us and the Soviets, that they were from somewhere else and that they were here monitoring us to make damn sure we didn't start World War III.
Right.
That was their primary purpose. Now, they used to come and they would land on our airfields. They would land in private homes. Well, they landed every damn place.
Right, so not just in America, in Europe as well?
No, it was all over the world, honey.
Right.
But we were all ratched up there, you know. We were
Sure.
wound up around the clock, so to speak. As I said, it was a very difficult time because we and the Soviets were facing each other, and we could have been just moments away from another war. Well, we learned from the study that these guys were determined to make damn certain that we and the Soviets didn't start another war. And over the years, they made their presence more and more known. As I said, they flew over, they landed, they'd get out of their ships and invite people aboard.
And do you know people who were invited aboard at all?
I'm sorry?
Do you know of any of the people who were invited aboard craft or had any discussion?
There was one case that was in the study. There was a Danish farmer who was sitting down to lunch one afternoon in a little farm outside of some little town in Denmark. He and his wife heard a commotion in the barnyard. The chickens and farm animals began making a big ruckus. The old man got up from his lunch table and opened the door and looked out, and this ship had come down and landed in his pasture right behind his house. And it landed on 3 legs, a tripod, a hatch opened, 2 human-looking people came down the ramp,
yes,
came over to the old man and invited him aboard. He pulled his napkin around his neck. So he was delighted. He went aboard with them. They took him for a flight. They went off God knows where. They'd gone about 30, 40 minutes. His missus, by this time, having watched her husband disappear into this object, she got all hysterical. She called the local police. The local police called the military, and everybody showed up at the house. And then the ship came back, landed in the pasture on 3 legs. The hatch opened. The old man came down and he said, "Boy, let me tell you where I've been. Let me tell you what I've seen." Well, the military grabbed him and whisked him away for about 4 or 5 days of, what do they call it?
Yes, interrogation of some kind.
Deprogramming him and all. Yeah. Debriefing him. And he had a ball. He had a delightful time. Now, the 2 guys who got out of the ship spoke perfect Danish. And they looked just like, human beings. We had another case in an Allied air base in northern Italy. Just 2 days before Christmas, the ship landed on the runway at this Allied base, this NATO base.
So would this be in the 1960s again?
This was in the early 60s.
Yeah.
And a young Italian security guard was on duty. And they landed on the runway. A couple of guys got out and in perfect Italian invited him to come aboard and take a ride. Well, the poor kid was so upset that he peed in his pants and was so scared he wasn't about to go aboard. And they said, well, bonjour, off they went. Away they went. Well, this happened again and again and again.
And did it involve any military personnel or government?
Well, the young soldier in northern Italy was a military man.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So from all these reports then, and then the study, what was the conclusion?
The conclusion, honey, after a 3-year study was, 1, they were not malevolent. They were not a danger. They were not a threat. The study concluded that they had been coming and going for not only hundreds, but perhaps thousands of years.
Yeah.
And that there was some sort of a program underway involving them.
Did they communicate any of the detail of that to any of our powers that be, the ones that would make the decisions about how?
The points they made, and they made them very well, was that they were not a threat, that they were here to nurture, watch, survey, monitor, watch our growth and development. And the idea was that we were a rather primitive and backward society, and we had nuclear weapons, and we were a danger to ourselves.
A bit like kids playing with matches.
I'm sorry?
A bit like children playing with matches.
Well, it's like older brothers looking at younger brothers, and we used to joke about it, that they showed interest in us because the joke we used to have was we were like the kids who found the box of hand grenades.
Yes, even worse
than
the matches. Yeah.
They were worried that we were going to pull the pins and blow ourselves up.
Was there any information or detail about what would happen as a consequence if we were allowed to continue on our way to World War III?
Well, they made it very clear, and they made it clear over the years, and they've still made it very clear, because we still have an intimate relationship with at least 2 of the groups.
Right.
Out of the four we knew of in 1963, we have a relationship with at least two of them, and they've made it very clear that we are being evaluated as what you might call a third world country. We were being evaluated for possible membership in a galactic federation.
I've heard that before. So
That they are members of a vast federation of planets, different star systems, even from different galaxies.
Yes.
And that we are being evaluated and nurtured and encouraged to grow up a little bit, dispense with our nuclear weapons and dispense with our traditional war-making processes.
Well, that hasn't really changed. We haven't stopped with our war-making.
Well, that's what's so
things.
sad about it. You
It
know?
is. It's tragic. So,
Over the years, honey, as I said, that was the beginning for me.
yes.
But over the years, and the more I learned and this deeper I got involved in my studies, until the day I retired from the Army in 1976, I still had a top secret clearance. Yeah. And then during those years, I began to have face-to-face meetings with some of them.
Oh, you did?
I have.
Do you know the race that they were? The races?
Well, the ones that I've been dealing with look just like us.
Mm-hmm. Did they say where they were from?
No, they never did. They never tried to explain what planet they were from, or what star system they were from, or even what galaxy they were from. They made the point to me many, many times that they were members of a vast organization out there of civilizations and planets and star systems that are almost infinite.
Yes. I mean, that must have been such a privilege and a real incredible journey for you to have been associated with them too.
It was a bit of a shock, honey, I'll be honest with you. Yeah. When it first began to dawn on me, the impact of what was happening to me was kind of a psychic shock.
I think this is what most experiencers find as well, and of course, again, you're part of that.
I went through a period of time where I literally lost my old worldview. My old paradigm literally crumbled around my knees, you know?
Yeah.
The old world that I had been raised in and the world I grew up in, it fell apart. Yeah. And I had to come face to face with a new reality that we humans on this planet are part of a vast, almost infinite community of intelligent life.
Yeah.
And apparently we are worthy of survival.
That's good to know, and I wonder how that's going to be achieved.
Well, you're seeing it take place every day. You'll notice that they have shown themselves more and more and more.
That's true.
They fly over cities, they hover over airports, they fly along beside our aircraft. We have alien ships in orbit around our planet that are over 5 miles in diameter. And our NASA people have photographed them. And I have shown photographs from Apollo 13 taken on the way to the moon, showing alien craft 5 miles in diameter. We also have photographs taken from the Voyager Enterprise in 1980.
Right.
When we went to the rings of Saturn.
Oh, yes.
We found objects in the rings of Saturn, self-luminous, artificial objects, the size of our moon, moving all around, all over the place under intelligent control. Now, these are artificial constructed objects the size of our moon. Now, our moon is 2,160 miles in diameter. Now, can you imagine an artificial constructed object under intelligent control that's running around in the rings of Saturn?
What are they doing in the rings of Saturn, I wonder?
Well, the conclusions reached by the Voyager 1 in 1980 was they apparently are mining the rings.
Okay, what for?
The rings are filled with ice and broken rock, and they're rich in nutrients, you know. All anything you could possibly want is in those rings. As I said, about 80-90% of them are water, but they apparently are mining those rings. Now, we're dealing, and I will say this bluntly, and this is the reason why the lid has come down. It's really why there is not going to be anything like a disclosure.
No, I agree with you.
Because you cannot tell the average person out there that we're dealing with a Type 2 civilization. Because the average guy out there, the ones I jokingly refer to as Joe Six-Pack, you can't tell the average guy on the street out there that we are in a relationship with advanced intelligence from other planets, other star systems, perhaps other dimensions that are Type 2 civilizations that can build artificial objects 5 miles long, 2,000 miles in diameter, because the average guy is simply is not able to deal with that. That's why our government, who knows most of this, has kept the lid on this thing for so many years.
And after your time in the Army, were you still being asked by the Army to disclose what your connections had?
After I retired from the Army, I went to work for FEMA.
Yes.
Federal Emergency Management Agency. I worked for FEMA for 14 more years.
Right.
Still kept my top secret clearance. All those years, I continued to study. I continued to have face-to-face meetings with them.
And what sort of regularity? How regular?
Oh, every month or two.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. I've had them come up to me at the end of a conference like this and introduce themselves. Oh, yeah.
That's fantastic.
They're delightful people.
Maybe they'll be here.
Well, they're family, honey. They really
Sure.
are.
Absolutely.
I call them cousins.
Yeah.
We have essentially the same genome.
Right.
One of the groups we found out really had a hand in manipulating our genetics.
Yes, there's a lot of talk about that.
Centuries ago, thousands of years ago. And they apparently upgraded us from a lower form, from Australopithecus or whatever, into what we are, Homo sapiens sapiens.
Yeah.
Well, that genetic manipulation is still underway. It's still going on.
Yeah.
They're still tweaking and upgrading our genes.
So is there any information that you can share with us that has been that you've gleaned from them in recent times that we can share with others?
Well, honey, I could go on for hours, but I'm not able to do it. my voice won't hold up.
No.
I must say it's important that I say this to your viewers. The thing that they've made it clear to me again and again and again, that the human race is undergoing a very painful transition.
Right.
We're going through what I call a period of adolescence into adulthood. And I call it not only a transitory period where it's painful as hell. Mm-hmm. If many of you can remember your own adolescence, you remember that it was not easy growing up.
Yeah.
But these guys are apparently determined to see us make that transition. And I call it a transcendent transformation into a new race. 100 years from now, the human race will be so unlike what we are today.
Which is nothing in time, is it?
Well, it's nothing. 100 years is just a moment in time. Because out there, they don't measure time.
No.
In space-time, there is no time as we know it.
And what has the military, your ex-bosses, had to say, if anything, about your continued contact?
When I first began to go public with public speaking in 1991, after many years of maintaining my secrecy, maintaining my oath that I had taken, not to speak about my experiences, I finally lost my cool, I lost my patience, and I said, to hell with it. I'm going to speak out publicly about what I've seen, what I've learned, what I've been shown, because it's important that the people need to know this.
I think it's imperative.
And I believe in my heart that the thing that I've been doing over the years and why I attend these conferences and why I feel so strongly about them is it is indeed, I think, contributing to an expansion of consciousness.
I agree with you.
Among the human race. And that is crucial for our survival. We've got to grow and understand who we are, what we are, how we came to be here, and where we're going. And I feel very positive about it. And they have encouraged me and they have shown me that our future is infinite. Our future is beautiful, gorgeous, beautiful.
I'm just wondering, as you're saying that, and I can visualize that, and I feel that there is something incredibly profound unfolding as we share this information and contact ourselves. I just wonder how they see. I can't imagine, let me put it this way, I can't imagine how the mass swathe of humanity can suddenly rise up unless there is some other impact happen, like maybe a solar flare which changes, like it said in the solar revolution, our DNA, so our consciousness
it's not something
is expanded.
that I expect to have in a big explosive way.
Yeah.
It's one person at a time. Each one of us is beginning to open our minds. Each one of us is beginning to wake up.
Yeah.
And those of us, like myself, who have been speaking out for the last 25, 30 years,
Yes, indeed.
are contributing in some small way. I kind of use the analogy of, I light one little candle. You light one little candle. My good friend over here lights a candle. And if we all light one little candle, before long we have a conflagration.
Yeah, indeed.
And we will, as a race, wake up, grow up, and with our expanded consciousness, we'll take our rightful place in that infinite universe filled with intelligent life. We are going to be invited to participate in that galactic civilization out there. And I get so excited about it because I'm not going to be around that much longer. I celebrate 84 years on Sunday.
Wow, congratulations.
So I'm not going to be
Fantastic.
here to see this all happen. I'll be looking at you guys from the other side.
We'll be waving.
But I want to tell your viewers, this is something that's got to be kept in your mind. The human race is going to the stars. We're going back to where we came from. And that is a glorious future. And in spite of all the difficulties, in spite of all the heartbreak and the pain of this adolescence we're going through, we have a glorious future. And I want your viewers to know that and not be afraid.
Bod Dean, thank you very much.
Well, thank you, honey. It's my pleasure. Thank you for your interview.
I'm going to let you get back to your friends. I know you've got loads of people queuing to see you.
All right,
and it's a
sweetheart.
real honor and a pleasure.
All right.
Thanks
It's
again.
my pleasure, honey.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Ammach in America. We're here at the 22nd International UFO Conference, and this is taking place in Arizona. And we're here now with Bob Brown, and Bob Brown was the founder of this fantastic, iconic conference, and he's come all the way to Arizona to be here, see the conference, and to tell us a little bit about what inspired him. Bob, welcome.
Well, thank you.
Can you tell us what first got you started on this road of creating this fantastic conference?
Well, yeah, we probably have to go back to my childhood, where it all began.
That's okay.
No, I'm jesting a little bit there. Let me correct one little thing you said there.
Okay.
I am the founder, but there were two of us that founded the International UFO Congress. Wendell Stevens.
Oh, the wonderful, late, great.
Yes,
Stevens.
and myself founded the event. Now, after the first 4 years, Wendell said, "Bob, I can't afford to lose any more money. Okay? I will continue to help you till my dying day, but I cannot lose another penny. So if it's going to continue, it's going to be on your shoulders, okay? So Wendell continued to be my partner and my mentor and my best friend in the world throughout all of it. But from that point forward, financially, it was on my shoulders to continue it.
Well, you've done an amazing job. So what was it about this field that got you involved? Have you had experiences yourself?
I have seen things, yes, of course. And look, this idea that there could be something else out there, there could be somebody stopping by and tapping us on the shoulder and saying, hello, we're here, okay? There's nothing more fantastic and incredible in life.
I think it's the most important thing to explore.
It is the most important thing. There is nothing. Everything else pales in importance to the fact, I said fact, that we are not alone in the universe. Here's a question I pose to people, okay? Do you agree that the universe is infinite? Most people will say, well, yeah. The farther out our scientists look, we're looking out there gazillions of light years now.
Yeah.
The farther we look, we find more existence, more creation.
Yeah.
What is the possible reason of creating an infinite universe? For me, it's a simple answer. There's only one possible reason: infinite life. It's everywhere.
So what was the driving force then behind the setting up of the conference? Was there something to do with Wendell's experiences?
No, not directly in any way. I had the strangest event ever happen to me ever in my life. We have to go back about 26, 27 years ago. Forgive me, it's a while back. I can't keep it exact. Somewhere around that time frame. Back then, I was mostly in the film business, and I would go to the Cannes Film Festival, the MIPCon actually, every year, buying and selling films.
So we're around the 80s, are we at this time, a bit earlier?
Yeah, let me see. Whatever 26 or 7 years ago would be, yes, that would put us about there. And so I'm at the Palais, the second day of the festival. They have a giant party at the Palais, which is on the other side of the bay, and it's a giant set of buildings, pavilion buildings with terraces connected, and there's 6,000 people from the convention that are here at the Palais at this party.
Right, okay.
And I'm walking through the crowd with a friend of mine, and we're talking film business, of course. What else? And as I'm walking through the crowd, a woman works her way across our path, and as my eyes fall on her and she's going across our path, a voice talked in my head. Now, not exactly like you and I are talking now, not exactly like that, but clearly and distinctly, a voice talked in my head, and it's the first and only time this has ever happened to me. And I guess I'm easy, because it changed me fundamentally when this occurred.
I mean, can I just ask you about the voice?
Yes.
Did it have a gender to it? Was it
No.
familiar?
It was genderless, but what it said was a very simple statement. You must talk to this woman. You must talk to this woman. It repeated and repeated and repeated. And so we walked across the terrace, we reached the next pavilion building, and I said goodbyes to my friend. He realized I wasn't there anymore, and I wasn't. And because this is going off in my head, and I'm panicking, I'm freaking out. I didn't know what was going on. And so the next thing I remember, I'm gulping a liquor drink. There's bars all over, and I'm gulping a liquor drink, and I'm walking in circles with this going off in my head. And I said, "Okay, I'll talk to her." And it stopped. It was like somebody hit a light switch. Boom. It stopped. And so now I'm panicked, because how am I going to find her? It's over 6,000 people at this party. And so, okay, I'll talk to her. I got to find her. So I retraced my steps. Okay, I think it was about here where she crossed, and I walked through the crowd, worked my way through the direction she was going. I got to the edge of the terrace, and there's tables along the Mediterranean at the edge of the terrace. There's tables, and she's sitting there. This woman is actually sitting down, and she's talking to two men. And I said, oh my God, what am I going to do? How am I going to, I can't just walk up to this woman and say, I got to talk to you. I don't know who she is. I have no idea who she is. Never seen her in my life.
Quite a challenge then.
Quite a challenge. So I said, okay, I'm just going to ease my way up to them, and I'm just going to listen to what they're saying. So I do that. And lo and behold, they're talking about these young men's next film project, which, if they get the funding, is going to be a documentary on the 20th anniversary of the Concorde supersonic airliner. They want to do this documentary. And so I said, thank you so much. What an incredible way to be led to these guys, because these are the kind of people I'm here to meet, right? So I turn around. Geez, I couldn't help overhearing what you guys were talking about. Forgive me. Here's my card. I'm with World Aviation Video, and we really would love to talk to you about North American distribution of this film if you make it. Okay? So we talk shop for 15 minutes or so, and these guys go on and take off, and now I'm left with this gal, right? Very personable, intelligent, nice-looking young lady. So we're talking, mostly shop. We're hanging out. We have some hors d'oeuvres. We have some wines. And then we look at each other, I don't know, 20 minutes, 30 minutes later. Well, what do you want? Well, you ready to go back? Yeah, I'm ready to go back. So we get on the bus, taking us back down to the Palais, and she's sitting next to the window and seat, and I'm sitting on the aisle seat. Now, I have to backtrack a little and give you some background. Before I left to Cannes for that year, about 3 or 4 months before then, I had read a book that was written by Gary Kinder, and it was called Light Years.
Oh, right. I think I have that book, actually.
And it was an update on the Pleiadian case, first reported on in the United States by Wendell Stevens. Yeah. Okay? Now, in this book, he talked about what really happened with the case, about how the case was killed in the United States by APRO and NICAP. And I was a member of both of those organizations.
Can you just tell us what they are for
well,
the viewers?
They were the first nationwide organizations where people could give membership support and get information about what is going on in ufology. The summons, here's the bottom line of the story. Both of these organizations heard about the Billy Meier case almost simultaneously, within 24 hours of each other. And they both were organizations that were struggling to get membership, struggling to stay afloat financially, to continue doing the work that they were doing in telling people on a monthly basis via their newsletters what was happening in the UFO field.
Yes, we know that story.
So, they contacted Billy Meier, both organizations, and had extensive conversations with him about his case and what was happening.
And can you just give us just a couple of sentences about his case for those who won't know?
Oh, okay. Billy Meier was a one-armed Swiss caretaker slash farmer who was having regular, ongoing contact with ETs. Yeah. And this contact was documented with visual sightings, trace sightings, actual medals and things that are left over, and the most amazing photo and motion picture evidence that we have to date.
Yeah, I think that Wendell was involved in a lot of the analysis of the photographs as well, wasn't he?
He was the prime investigator from the United States that paid attention to the case and went over and dug into it. Yeah. And people don't understand how incredible the case was. This case was so full of synergistic and virtually paranormal events that happened not just to Meier throughout the whole thing, but they extended to the people that got close to him. Yeah. The stuff that happened with Wendell during his investigation Wendell didn't talk about it because he felt that it would take away from the reality of the case itself, because it was such high strangeness. I mean, virtually paranormal magic was going on around this entire case all the time. So it was an amazing case. To this day, I say it's still the best case that we have out there, ever. So I read this book by Gary Kinder, and he told about how these organizations killed the case in the United States, at least, by saying that it was all phony. And the reason that they said it was Meyer agreed to have them over. His material was open to anyone that wanted to come and see it. They could investigate the sites, the photos, the motion picture film, the witnesses, the physical evidence, etc., etc., etc.
Yes, he was very cooperative, wasn't he?
Very cooperative to anyone that really wanted to know the truth of it. Yeah. And so they said, we'll be there next week. We'll have our representative there. Yeah. But first we have to cable you our exclusivity agreement. And Meyer said, wait a minute, what exclusivity agreement? Oh, we can't afford to take our limited resources and put them into the investigation of your case unless we have an exclusive on it. And Meyer said, no, absolutely not. What's happening here is a story for the world. It's not exclusive to anyone. So each organization independently came to exactly the same conclusion. We have to torpedo this case in case our competitive organization latches onto it and agrees to this and reports it. We have to torpedo it first. So it was this intense competition and rivalry between these organizations that caused them to torpedo the Meyer case. They did it in the worst possible way, the way that most torpedoing is still done in the whole field today, and that is an investigator from their armchair, sitting in their armchair, okay, proclamation, oh, that's phony, that's all wrong, that's not real, those people are $3 bills, etc., etc., etc. Still the way it's done today. But to find out about 12 years later, right, that these organizations that I supported had done this, I was furious, okay, number one. But more importantly, number two, after reading the book, I realized that this is a real case.
Yes.
A real case.
Indeed.
And so, night and day on my mind, the biggest question in my mind, I would go to sleep with this question on my mind, I would wake up with this question on my mind, right? Is the Meyer case real? So in between the MIPCON and the MIFED, the Milan Film Festival, which follows it, there's a 9-day window.
Right.
And so I said, I will rent a car and I'll drive to Switzerland. I'll see if I can find this place called Schmidt-Rudy.
Yes, yeah.
And I'll see if I can actually, do my own investigation of it. And maybe with some luck, I'll even get to meet Meyer.
Yeah.
So this was on my mind. Consuming me for 3.5, 4 months before going there. So now it's 2 days into the conference, and I'm left talking with this woman, right? So we're going back on the bus, driving back to the Palais. And so we're talking about what we're doing, and I said, hey, I'm showing a new film in 3 days in such and such time in theater so-and-so, and it's in 70 millimeter. It's a documentary on the SR-71 Blackbird. And she says, oh, I'd love to go see that film. She says, but I won't be here because I have to leave day after tomorrow. I have to meet my film crew, and I'm going to do a story on whether the elephant is going to be declared an endangered species or not. And I'm going to meet the crew, and we're doing it from Switzerland, where they're making the announcement. So she says, Switzerland, right? What pops into my head? But what's been driving me crazy for 4 months? The truth of the Meyer case, right? So I said to her, never expecting an answer, really, I said, well, that's in Switzerland. I said, does the name Edward Billy Meyer mean anything to you? Oh, my God. Oh, my gosh. She melted up against the window, and she screamed at me, who the hell are you? How do you know Edward Billy Meyer? Are you NSA? Are you CIA? So, I was just overwhelmed, and so I just was calm, and I said, no, I'm who I told you I was. I do documentary films. I deal in them, I work in them, and I read this book, Light Years, and I just was thinking about trying to get in my own mind, to the truth of this in between the two conventions. So she says, "You really aren't NSA. You really aren't. You really aren't Air Force Special Services. You aren't." No, I'm not. I'm not any of those things. I'm who I am. I'm Bob Brown. And she said, "Okay." She says, "We got to talk." She says, "Can you come to my hotel with me?" I says, "Well, yeah, I can." So I go to the hotel. She checks her messages and takes her 10 minutes, and she comes down. She says, "Okay, I'm free." So we walk out along the Mediterranean. We find this little all-night bar cafe, and we're sitting out there, and we sat down and we commenced to have this incredible talk about UFOs and about paranormal and about Edward Billy Meyer.
Right.
Because it turns
Right.
out that she herself had been there, not more than once.
Oh, what, to Shmuti?
Yes,
Is that the right
yes.
phrasing? Yeah.
And so she herself had done all the things that I wanted to do, right? And the only bad thing from that meeting was that she did kind of discourage me from going on my own. She said, "He'll be very happy to meet you and see with you and talk with you, but you got to write him first. You've got to tell him you're going to come. You've got to get like an invitation, because if you just show up, it's not going to be good." Okay? And so I did let her convince me to do that part of it. But it turned out that short of meeting Wendell right then, at that time, and I hadn't met Wendell yet at this time.
Okay.
So short of meeting Wendell or Billy Meyer himself, she was probably the best person in the entire world that I could have met at that moment in time to talk about with the Billy Meyer case. Right?
Prompted by your voice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, do you have any idea who this woman was?
No, do tell.
No idea?
No.
Okay. Her name was Linda Moulton Howe.
Okay. Okay.
She had just finished her first big coffee table book on cattle mutilations
Oh, sure.
at that time. So that was when I first met her. And so what I'm saying is that I'm easy, because when I got back, I said, "This is all just unbelievable," right? Remember, a voice talked in my head. Now, I don't know the last time you've had a voice talk in your head
Hasn't happened yet.
and lead you to exactly who you need to be led to in the entire world, right?
Yeah.
At that moment of your life, okay? So I said, wow, I'm making documentary films, okay? Maybe I need to make a documentary film on the UFO phenomena. So that's what ended up happening. During the next year and a half, I spent a year crisscrossing the United States with a partner, Ted Oliphant, and we made a documentary called UFOs: A Need to Know. It was a feature length, finished out at 93 minutes, and to this day I think it's one of the greatest introductory kinds of things that's been done in the field. And so all of that was due to this. Now, I said that we have to start at the beginning when I was a kid. Well, look, from the time that I was a kid, I had interest in these subjects, okay? And my interest, waned and grew and waned and grew, throughout my life. But it was always there, and this just jump-started me.
Yeah.
It kicked me in the ass, and it said, "Hey, you are supposed to be doing something," right? So in the process of making the documentary, and in the process of crisscrossing the country, we went to all of the UFO conferences that there were to go to at that time.
Okay.
And universally, all of them, in my humble opinion, were being done, most of them for the wrong reasons, in the wrong way. And at the end of it all, I said, it can be done better.
Yeah.
It can be done better. It can be done with respect for the person that's trying to come there and get information, which means that you don't do it as a dog and pony show.
Yeah.
You don't have 5 speakers speaking in front of each other in 5 different lecture halls,
Yeah.
right? Where you have to
Run
get an
around.
ulcer trying to figure out who you want to hear, right? You don't charge exorbitant prices because you're not doing this to make money, okay? You're doing this to give the presenters, the researchers, the speakers a platform
Yeah.
which is respectful
Yeah.
and which is for them alone. When the curtain goes up and they're making their information available, that is whose information is being available
Yeah.
at that time, not 6 other people's
Yeah.
competing. Okay, not what it was about. So we structured the International UFO Congress. First of all, it was designed to be a week-long event. People said, "Bob, you're crazy. You can't do a week-long event, right?" Well, turns out you can.
You definitely can.
Turns out you can. And so, long story short, I think that over the 20 years that we did the conferences, we did 24 conferences over 20 years, and I think that we've basically proved all the naysayers wrong.
Yeah, I think you did. And I think you've left us a fantastic legacy, which is continued here with open minds. And, we can't thank you enough.
Well, yes, it's been a great journey.
Yeah.
It's a great journey.
Yeah.
And for those people that are getting ready to make the journey, there's nothing else in your life that you can ever spend your time and your energy trying to get to the bottom of than the reality that we are not alone.
And that is exactly what Bod Dean said, whom we've just spoken to as well. And I think it's the most important thing that humanity can focus on.
Indeed it is.
Bob Brown,
Well, thank you for spending some time.
that's great. And thank you for that story. Absolutely fantastic. And thanks again for your wonderful contribution to this field and to all of our education.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Miles. Another one. It's a wrap for Ammach in America, at Arizona, with Bob Brown.
The Ammach Project.
Hello and welcome to Ammach in America. Miles, Marie and myself are here at the 22nd International UFO Congress, and we're here in sunny Arizona. It's wonderful. Now I have a very special guest and I'm absolutely delighted and honoured to welcome Bod Dean. Bob, welcome.
Thank you,
Thank you
Annie.
for spending some time with us. I know you're busy. I know you're very sought after.
It's my pleasure, sweetheart. Thank you.
I would just like to ask you about your initial experiences and how you got to your understanding of ET and the effect it's having on our planet and our governments and the governments of the world's involvement. So perhaps you could kick us off with some of your...
You're asking me to go back from to the beginning, honey, and we have to go back 50 years at least. I spent most of my adult life as a professional soldier.
Yes.
I spent 27 years on active duty in the Army, and I had the pleasure of being assigned to Supreme Headquarters, Allied Powers in Europe, in 1963, which at that time was located just outside of Paris in France. So these objects flying all over Europe in formation at a high altitude, tremendous speeds, and obviously under intelligent control. So this NATO study was decided to determine what were they? Were they a threat to us? What were they? Who were they?
Yeah.
We found out that they didn't belong to the Soviets, and the Soviets found that they didn't belong to us. So the big question was, who the hell are these guys? And this 3-year study indicated that they were extraterrestrials from several other planets, and they were here monitoring everything we did.
And did they name the kind of planets that were involved? Did they have any
honey.
idea?
In those days, they had no idea where they were from. All we knew during the study was that there were 4 different groups involved.
Right.
They were all humanoid, but one group was entirely human. They looked so much like us that they could have sat beside us in a restaurant or in a theater or in an airplane, and we would have never known.
And how did they find out about these 4 different races? Was it a consequence of downed craft?
Well,
kind of thing?
I refer, quote unquote, they made it very clear to everybody, us and the Soviets, that they were from somewhere else and that they were here monitoring us to make damn sure we didn't start World War III.
Right.
That was their primary purpose. Now, they used to come and they would land on our airfields. They would land in private homes. Well, they landed every damn place.
Right, so not just in America, in Europe as well?
No, it was all over the world, honey.
Right.
So I went off to my new assignment in 1963.
And what was your role in that assignment?
Well, I was assigned, at the time I had a top secret clearance. And I applied for an assignment at SHAPE because it was rather a choice assignment.
Sure.
I was able to take my wife, children with me, and we went to Paris. My kids went to high school in Paris. And in the summer of 1963, I went off to SHAPE headquarters in Paris with a top secret clearance. At the moment I arrived, I was assigned to the operations division of SHAPE headquarters, and a further assignment to what we call SHOC, the Supreme Headquarters Operations Center,
Okay.
which was that time the war room. So my top secret clearance was upgraded to cosmic top secret, which was then and still is the highest level of security classification in NATO.
Right.
And I
So-
worked in the war room. And then I was assigned to run the duty rosters in the war room, and we were on a shift, 10 and 12-hour shifts, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And it was during that assignment that I was exposed to a very top secret, sensitive SHAPE study called an assessment. And the assessment at the time was a study that they initiated in 1961. They published it in 63, and I got a copy and I was able to read it, and it changed my life.
And what were the circumstances of you having access to this document?
Well, I had a cosmic top secret clearance, and I
Okay.
worked in the war room.
All right, okay.
And when they published the document, they only published 15 copies. And one of the copies was assigned to the Shape War Room, Shock. And because I worked there, I had a desk in there, I was exposed to the document. I had a chance to look at it, and it literally blew my lid. It changed my life. It was a 3-year study that NATO had done about the extraterrestrial presence. The fact that they were here, they'd been here for several thousands of years, and the initial study was decided to determine whether they were or not a threat to Allied forces in Europe.
And was there something that precipitated this report being made in the first place?
Well, of course. One of the things that caused the big stir back then is that we in the Soviet Union, we had a divided Europe. The Iron Curtain had come down.
Yes.
We had the NATO forces on the left side, Western Europe. The Warsaw Pact and the NATO, or the Soviet forces, were on the eastern side. And there had been a number of flyovers of large circular metallic craft flying all over Europe in those days,
Right.
in formation, very obviously under intelligent control. Now, for a time, the Soviets thought those objects belonged to us. And for a short time, we thought they might belong to the Soviets.
Which could have caused a real issue.
Well,
and
it
problem.
could have posed a real issue. We were armed to the teeth.
Sure.
The Warsaw Pact on the east and the NATO forces on the west. We all had our hands on the guns and fingers on the triggers.
Buttons, yeah.
Yeah, World War III was moments away. So these